This is CR Change Request. From the Sunday Desk, your structural brief for the week ending Sunday, July 5th, 2026. This week's read covers 9 signals across 3 layers: the capital route, the entry line, and the price sheet. One word is holding this entire week together, and the word is permission. Who can coordinate money? Who can own the upside? Who can enter? Who can be tracked? Who can protect a source? Who can use the open web, and at what price? You do not have to hold every detail at once. Just track where permission sits, who writes the terms, and who pays when the terms change. Some permissions were granted this week. Some were monetized. Some were tightened around people. And a few, and I want you to notice this, were refused and reclaimed. So the read is not power moving in one direction. It is a ledger with entries on both sides. And our job today is to read the ledger instead of the headlines stacked on top of it. Layer 1 is the capital route, and it opens at the Supreme Court. Both signals here answer the same question: who gets to move money, and who gets to own the outcome, with fewer hands in between? The court struck down federal limits on coordinated spending between political parties and their candidates in a challenge brought by the Senate Republican Campaign Committee. The surface version calls this one more campaign finance ruling, one more open door for money in elections. That read is not wrong. It is just shallow. So what actually changed? Proximity. You do not have to agree with the politics to see the architecture here. Money was always going to be in the race. The question was how close it could legally sit to strategy. For years, the biggest outside dollars had to keep their distance, parked in super PACs that could spend heavily but could not lawfully coordinate with the campaigns they were boosting. This ruling collapses that distance for the parties. A party committee can now plan with the candidate, spend with the candidate, and use legally raised party funds in full coordination with the campaign it is supporting. It redraws the architecture of political money. Now, the institutionalists will make an honest case here, and it deserves a fair read. Parties are chartered, visible, and accountable in ways a pop-up super PAC never was. So pulling power back toward the party could mean more discipline and fewer shadows. Hold that, because the other side of the ledger is just as real. A cleaner route for coordination is also a cleaner route for concentration. The donor who used to buy influence awkwardly at arm's length can now send it through the party itself. If you have ever watched a small local race get flooded from 3 states away, you already know how this lands. The yard signs are local. The money is not. The money did not get louder. It got closer. The proof of this one arrives with the spending reports, not the press releases. Track whether donors start migrating out of super PACs and into party committees, and whether the party's new room becomes discipline or becomes dependence. The structure changed on paper this week. The first full cycle under it will tell us what the paper actually means. That question of proximity runs straight into the second signal, because the week's other capital story is about the government's own balance sheet. Word out of Washington is that OpenAI has discussed giving the United States government a 5% stake, with the suggestion that other American AI companies could be pulled into the same model. It would likely require congressional action, and it arrives while the industry is under real scrutiny in the Capitol. The surface read calls this industrial policy, maybe even shared prosperity, the public finally getting a piece of the boom it is subsidizing with land, power, and protection. Said plainly, though, the state would not just regulate the sector, buy from it, and shield it. The state would be financially exposed to the sector's upside. Can a regulator hold equity in the thing it regulates and still read it clearly? History says rarely. You already know this pattern from other industries. Once a public balance sheet is invested in a sector's growth, restraint gets expensive, and every oversight decision carries a portfolio effect underneath it. Sit with that before the prosperity framing wins the room. The stakes for everyone outside the room are simple to name. This decides whether the AI century pays the public an actual dividend or just borrows the public's name while the upside concentrates. Congress will tell us early whether a public wealth structure is real or just rhetorical. And if you carry one question forward from this signal, carry the sequencing question. Do the conflict guardrails get designed before the equity exists or after? Does the public receive real value or a symbolic seat? It is hard to blow the whistle on your own portfolio. And that sentence belongs above every hearing on this. That closes the capital route. Layer 2 is the entry line, and this is where the weak stops being abstract because these permissions attach to people. 3 signals: a street, a visa window, and a camera. Start in South Africa, where the government deployed 3,405 soldiers at the end of June to back up police during anti-migrant unrest, with more than 900 arrests so far. The surface read calls it an immigration crisis. Read the numbers and the story changes shape. Immigrants are roughly 4% of South Africa's population, and the researchers closest to the data dispute the claim that migrants are driving unemployment, crime, or the strain on public services. So why does 4% of the country carry this much of the blame? Because scarcity needs a suspect. When the governing structure cannot restore confidence in jobs, safety, and service delivery, the argument shifts from why the line is not moving to who is standing in it. The anger in those streets is real. The rent is real. The clinic queue is real. The target is what is structurally wrong, and the play is older than the headline. From here, the tell is how the state behaves. Does it restore lawful control, or does it start chasing protest sentiment? And follow whether migration becomes the substitute debate, the argument that lets the deeper economic failure go unexamined, because vigilante enforcement grows in exactly that gap. From the streets of South Africa to a visa window, because the next signal is also about who gets stopped at the gate. After the birthright citizenship ruling, the administration and its allies began moving on what they call birth tourism, visa enforcement, fraud investigations, and open discussion of restricting pregnant foreign travelers from entering the country. The surface read says this targets organized fraud, and organized schemes do exist and can lawfully be prosecuted. The structural read is about where the pressure moved. The constitutional rule may still hold at the moment of birth, so the enforcement went upstream to the consulate, the airline counter, the border officer's discretion. In plain language, if you cannot change what the Constitution says in the delivery room, you can try to control who boards the plane. Do not rush past that because it is the hinge of the whole signal. Administrative discretion is being asked to accomplish what the constitutional text would not. And the human cost sits where no fraud statistic reaches. Somewhere in the months ahead, a woman with a valid visa and a visible pregnancy will stand at a counter and be asked to prove her intentions. Pregnancy becomes a screening flag. The body becomes the paperwork. The gate moved from the border to the body. Going forward, notice where the enforcement settles. If it holds to organized schemes, that is one story. If it widens into general suspicion at the visa window, that is a different country. And the litigation will move with it, away from citizenship itself and toward due process, equal protection, and how far consular discretion can stretch. Now, the last signal on the entry line looks like two stories, one American and one Dutch. And I am pairing them on purpose because they move in opposite directions, and the tension between them is the point. Flock Safety's license plate readers now operate in more than 6,000 communities across the United States. And since early 2025, about 50 cities and counties have canceled or rejected Flock contracts over privacy, data sharing, and oversight concerns. Across the Atlantic, the Dutch government blocked a €100 million takeover of Solvinity, the firm tied to Digity, the national digital identity platform, on public interest grounds. One story is private surveillance expanding while communities try to claw the permission back. The other is a state refusing to let a sensitive identity system change hands at all. Stay with me on why these belong together. Movement data and digital identity have become civic infrastructure, the plumbing people cannot opt out of. And the live question is no longer whether the technology works, it is which institution owns it, which one searches it, how long the record is kept, and who can stop its transfer. Who controls the record of where you drove last Tuesday? In thousands of towns right now, the honest answer runs through a vendor-managed system. If you sit on a council or a county board, take the operational lesson. The cameras go up in a week, and the governance questions arrive for years. Permission, once signed away, rarely comes back at the original price. For anyone close to one of these contracts, the questions that matter are old-fashioned governance questions. How long the data is kept, which agencies get to search it, and whether a few thousand local contracts add up to a national network that nobody ever voted on as one. The Dutch just added a new question to that list, and it is worth repeating in every procurement room. Is this simply too sensitive to sell? That brings us to the price sheet, the third and heaviest stratum of the week. 4 signals, and in every one, permission stopped being a principal and got a number attached. A checkout flow, a per worker fee, a daily fine, and a toll on the open web. Stay with the structure here. The detail matters, but the pattern matters more. Start with the proposed ATF rule that would let licensed dealers ship firearms directly to in-state buyers after online identity verification, a background check, and a 7-day waiting period. The agency projects nearly 3.3 million buyers a year could eventually use home delivery. The surface read calls it a gun story or a deregulation story. The sharper read is commerce design. A regulated, high-friction, face-to-face transaction is being converted into a checkout flow. And deregulation never just removes rules. It creates markets and it picks winners, usually the companies already built for scale online. I will place 2 facts side by side and let you read them together. The rule would expand online firearm retail. Donald Trump Jr. sits on the board of Grab-A-Gun, one of the larger online firearm retailers, holding more than 300,000 shares. And both he and the company deny any involvement in the rule's development. The denial is on the record. The structural point stands either way. When the checkpoint moves from a counter to a screen, whoever audits the screen holds the public's trust. And the counter was never only a store. It was a checkpoint with a human being behind it, one more set of eyes on a high risk transaction. Now, this rule is not finished, and that matters. It still has to be finalized, and state attorneys general are likely already drafting. When the challenges come, expect them to land on the auditing of that identity screen, on package theft, on straw purchases. And underneath the legal fight sits the market question nobody is litigating: whether the local shop survives the platform economics at all. The second line on the price sheet was written in Trenton. New Jersey enacted a fee on employers with at least 50 workers enrolled in Medicaid, ranging from $325 to $725 per covered worker, depending on the size of the company, with roughly $145 million expected in the first year. Temporary, seasonal, and part time workers are exempt, and the law bars employers from making job decisions based on anyone's Medicaid status. The simple version is this: New Jersey is arguing that if your labor model leaves workers connected to public coverage at scale, the public gets to send you part of the bill. That is a cost assignment question, and it is the honest fight underneath the policy machinery. Similar attempts have stumbled on federal benefits law before, and the newer drafting is clearly trying to route around those old vulnerabilities, which is exactly where the lawyers will aim first. There is also a worker inside this policy who deserves a careful read. If enrollment ever starts to feel like a mark beside your name at work, some people will quietly go uncovered rather than be counted. And a funding fix that stigmatizes the people it covers has not fixed much. The lawsuits will come first, so start there. Then follow which states copy the model because cost assignment ideas travel fast when budgets are tight. And keep one eye on the behavior inside the companies, on hours, on benefit design, on hiring, because if employers start moving people off the ledger instead of up it, the policy will have answered its own question. The third price on the sheet is charged by the day. The Supreme Court declined to pause a contempt fine of $800 a day against the journalist Catherine Herridge for refusing to name a confidential source. One justice, Brett Kavanaugh, said he would have granted the pause. The surface read frames it as press versus power, and that frame misses the geometry. This is a three-cornered collision. Heritage is protecting a source, which is the oldest promise in the craft. Yangping Chen, the scientist who brought the case, was investigated by the FBI, never charged, and then watched details about her surface in the press. She is not trying to punish journalism. She is trying to prove the government violated her privacy. And the one person who knows the answer is honoring a promise not to say. And the institution that leaked has never surfaced its own leaker, which is the corner of this triangle drawing the least attention. What does it cost to keep a promise to a source? In this courtroom, $800 a day. Every party here has a legitimate claim, and the machinery has no clean exit, which is why the pressure landed on the reporter. When the source becomes the evidence, the promise becomes the price. From here, the first question is simple: does the meter start running? After that, the pressure moves to Congress, which has talked about a federal shield law for decades without passing one, and to every national security reporter now rethinking how a source gets protected. Because the route is visible now, and privacy plaintiffs will remember the way. And the last toll on the sheet may reach the furthest because it sits on the open web itself. Cloudflare announced new controls that sort AI crawlers into three categories: search, agent, and training. Starting on September 15th, new domains will block training and agent crawlers by default on pages that carry advertising, while search stays allowed. The surface read calls it a settings change. What that means is the web's founding bargain is being rewritten. The old deal was simple. Crawlers took your content, sent readers back, and you monetized the attention. AI answer engines break that deal because they can extract the value and keep the reader. So the web is moving from visibility economics to access economics, and one company is positioning itself as the default permission desk for AI access to content. So what should you be tracking here? The deals. Follow whether publishers actually adopt pay-per-crawl terms and whether AI companies start negotiating access instead of taking it. And pay particular attention to the small publishers, because if they cannot enforce any of this, the toll only protects the already large. If you publish anything at all, a newsletter, a research desk, a local paper, this is your economics shifting underneath you. You spent the last decade optimizing to be found. The next one may be about deciding who is allowed to take. The open web is not closing, it is invoicing. That is 9 signals, and read together, they are one ledger. The party became the capital route. The regulator weighed becoming a shareholder. Scarcity went looking for a suspect. The gate moved toward the pregnant traveler. Communities and one careful government asked for their permissions back. The gun counter became a checkout flow. Medicaid became a line on the labor ledger. A promise to a source was given a daily price, and the open web started charging at the door. Across all 9, the operating structure is doing one thing. It is converting permission into position. Whoever grants access is turning that grant into money, leverage, or control. And whoever needs access is finding the terms rewritten mid-use. That is the permission ledger. Some entries favored capital, some tightened around bodies and borders, and a few were refused and reclaimed in Dutch data centers and American council chambers, which tells you the ledger is still being written and that refusal remains a live entry. Before this week's instruction, come back with me to the signal carrying the most weight. Strip the legal language off the birth tourism story, and it comes down to this. The rule at birth may hold, but the screening is moving earlier to the visa window and the boarding gate, where a pregnancy can be treated as evidence of intent. When a governing structure cannot change a right directly, it changes who can get close enough to use it. Keep that read. It travels well beyond immigration. This week's instruction: watch the gate, not the headline. The headline tells you what an institution wants credit for. The gate tells you what actually changed, who can enter, who pays, and who decides. And that's the brief for this week. Good to be in the room with you. Until next time, this has been CR Change Request.